Hello, welcome to this short video in which we're going to discuss course learning outcomes and how we can create them to provide your students the ability to be very successful in your course. So course learning outcomes, what exactly are they? We're really thinking about why course learning outcomes are going to be very valuable to your students. We're going to consider over the next kind of minute or two how to write effective and student-centered course learning outcomes as well. So course learning outcomes are very important about binding courses together between subjects, and also to give your students a clear roadmap as to kind of what's coming up as well. So course learning outcomes describe really the fundamental knowledge, skills, and abilities that students are able to develop in your course. They are the foundation and really the effective kind of initial step in designing your course. So when we talk about the course design cycle in a few moments, the course learning outcomes are going to be the first place here as well. So this slide is really, really important, and we really want to focus on students as the performer. So they're going to be primary in this exchange. They're really going to be focusing on what exactly it is that the students are expected to know, at what level they're able to think about, and also the dispositional element. What are they going to value when they leave you after your 5-week or your 10-week course here at UC San Diego? So this particular slide really discusses why they matter, and why they matter both to students and to instructors. So for example, student learning outcomes, when they're written correctly, they can reduce anxiety for students. So an example given was a colleague mentioned to us that the students said to him that having clear course learning outcomes gave those students an ability to plan effectively their course and really try to kind of manage their other work in their other classes as well. So there are other obligations, which was incredibly powerful for them. For instructors, it really creates a bridge between courses. So how, for example, Linguistics 101 connects with a course later on in their course of study, and it really kind of acts as like a planning component for faculty to really consider here as well. So when we're writing our actual course learning outcomes, we want to make them student-centered. So a nice way of considering this is, when you're writing out a course learning outcome, you start with saying students will be able to. This automatically frames your learning outcome as to what the student will be able to do. We're going to talk about measurement in just a second, but this is something that's incredibly important. When you're asking your students to do something, you want to be able to measure whether they've been successful at doing that. We're going to be using action verbs, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. And in respect to alignment, we want to make sure that your student course learning outcomes are going to be well aligned, not only with the assessments of the course, but also kind of other expectations within your department as well. So Bloom's taxonomy. Many of you may have come across this already, but for those of you who haven't, this taxonomy is used to really kind of classify a number of different levels. So it might be the case that, for example, the remember level would be something that you're wanting your students to do at the very beginning of a course or a course of study. So in this case, students will be able to identify the main thesis of each of the readings in their course and to support that for their particular thesis. Now, if that's the case, advancing this up Bloom will allow students to, for example, this next one, will be able to evaluate current news stories and political issues related to earth and climate sciences. So Bloom's taxonomy, it adds different levels of complexity, and I think it's really important to understand that whether you're going to you're asking your students to engage at the remember or the create components of Bloom, it's not good or bad. It's just appropriate for that particular level of study and considering who your students are as well. So Bloom's taxonomy is going to be really important when writing our course learning outcomes. So let's take this for example. So this particular outcome talks about understanding. It's quite hard to measure understanding in this sense. So students will be able to understand how the hydrologic cycle contributes to the production of lake effect snow and its impact on weather. We have to consider Do you want your students to actually explain what the hydrologic cycle is and its impact on weather? Or do you want them to kind of consider higher level order thinking here? Would you like them to kind of analyze weather-related data and make some predictions? So the other part of this is that if you create your outcomes with this in mind, it might be a little bit easier to actually measure whether your students are successful in doing this. So let's take a look at a couple of revised versions. So this particular version reads, explain how the hydrologic cycle, the process of the hydrologic cycle contributes to the production of lake effect snow and the potential impact on weather, and make a prediction of lake effect snow based on analysis of weather conditions. So these particular outcomes, these revised outcomes, are now student-centered and measurable as well. So this is just a quick short video just to kind of frame your thinking about course learning outcomes. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start to try to write and revise our own course learning outcomes. So thank you so much for listening, and we look forward to working with you in a short amount of time. Thank you.